Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Bedtime Stories. I am Mr. E, your host for the evening, or the afternoon, or even the morning, depending on when you're watching this. So, put some socks on and let's go for a walk, shall we? Because our story tonight is entitled The Wandering Fairy. Once upon a time, throughout many realms, there was a fairy known as Jean. Jean was well known in a very happy and wonderful way. She carried with her her replenishing bag of pixie dust that she used to help make others feel happier, more alive, better about themselves and about the way things are. She also came with a magic wand that she waved about whenever things got just a little hairy and just a little ugly. And every town she came to across the realms rejoiced in her having visited, in her having come and made their lives better. And their kingdoms, their towns, they still rejoice to these days as she travels. But she is on one final mission before her passing the torch. A town that had yet to be visited, and upon where all sadness seemed to flow. She was on that quest. She was on that journey. And the town's name was Moorville. But the name of the town really doesn't matter. What flowed out of it was endless sadness, perpetual sadness. And it was time for her to travel there, to see what she could do, to stop it once and for all. This was her final mission, and she was determined. Jean, the wandering fairy, was determined to accomplish her mission. As she got there, she noticed that there was a very dark, gray cloud just over the horizon that seemed to stretch behind it. No sunlight could be seen. And as she got closer, she started to notice lightning bolts coming down. And in that scenery, she saw mountains 3,000-4,000 feet high. Nothing major, but still enough. And she noticed just how gloomy everything looked. How miserable, depressed everything looked. From the trees and the grass, to the shrubbery, to even the waters. And as she observed and saw fish swimming up and down the stream, even they swam with a shitty attitude. Truly shitty attitude. Just like, who gives a fuck? She tried her magic pixie dust. Wasn't having any effect. Wasn't doing nothing. She waved her magic wand at the fish. Fish seemed unaffected. And it seemed to end about 10 steps ago, where she was at that point. So at that stage, she's going, okay. Either the effects are carried on by whatever lives and passes by the barrier, I guess you want to call it. Sounds plausible. So let's run with that. That's what she thought. That's the way it was going to be. As she kept going along the path, gloomier it got, more depressed it got, the more gray it got, darker colors everywhere. She hadn't encountered anybody yet. She was quite curious. She was quite curious as to why. But in another 100 yards, she found her first person. He was out there chopping wood with an axe so dull it could be only matched by the person's personality. Bland, lifeless, resigned, gray. Nothing. She walked upon him and asked him where the main buildings and where everybody was at. He told her, well, you don't have much more to go. It's that way, you know. You got a little bit left. But, you know, anybody who comes in there never leaves happy. Always leaves miserable. We've been here all our lives. We're never leaving. She looked at him and smiled and said, well, thanks for the exposition. I appreciate that. Has anybody been like me ever been through here before? He looked at her and noticed her and looked at her and said, yeah, once. About 50 years ago. She looked at him and she asked him what happened to that fairy. He responded, she's in town. You'll find her. Have a good one. I'm right back to chopping trees. Chopping wood. She was quite puzzled. Didn't know how to react to that. She figured, head into town. Maybe find one of her fairy friends. So she kept going along the path, the way he directed. Eventually she came to some small huts, very drab, very lifeless, yet people around. Very boring, very run down, very miserable. And Mary asked the people she encountered what the source of the sadness was, what caused the sadness in the kingdom. And the people kept replying, there is a fountain at the top of the mountain behind us that flows into our water, that gives us our life. But we have always felt sad, and we've never known why. But maybe the water is the problem. The fairy looked at them and was like, why haven't you shut it down? Why haven't you stopped drinking the water? The villagers replied, because we need to stay alive. And the fairy replied, so you're willing to trade your happiness for your life? And the villagers replied, yes, quite easily. The fairy knew what to do at that stage. Fairy knew what to do at that point. The fairy walked through the village, walked through the town, walked towards that mountain that fed the stream, that fed the river, that fed the town, their water that they needed to stay alive. And she walked towards that mountain. She climbed that mountain. And she got to the top of that mountain. where that river first began. She found a man there. A cold, unfrosted man. Pale in features. Kneeling at the beginning of that water. She looked upon him and asked, "Old man, what are you doing here?" The old man looked at her and replied, "Waiting for you." Elf stood up straight, posture somewhat aggressive now. "Why would you be waiting for me?" The old man replied, "It's time for me to retire." "Your bosses didn't tell you?" "Bosses tell me what?" "This is your retirement gift. As a fairy, your job was to always keep happiness. Mine, the opposite. Now that you have retired from your old job, it's time for you to take this new job, and I can move on to the next stage. Now I know why my bosses didn't tell me. They wanted me to see how miserable things were here. As I passed through the area, the town, the village, they wanted me to see this, knowing how much I enjoyed bringing happiness to everyone. This is my job, and I'm going to like it here." I looked at the old man and I said to him, "Congratulations. You found your fairy. You can retire now, sir." He got up, shook my hand. "You are a worthy and honorable fairy. May the eons treat you well." And with that, he just faded into non-existence. And I sat down at the beginning of that stream, turned into that river that fed the town their misery, began to pour pixie dust, handful by handful. And as I did, I watched the stream change. I watched the river bed change, the stream bed change. I watched the grass around it change. I watched it get greener, brighter, lusher. Minutes passed, and I could see the difference just down the hill. Hours passed, and the whole area looked much greener. Days passed. There were fireworks festivals in the town below, the one that had always been so miserable. It was a good and honorable life, and I was glad to live it, and I hope to never stop. So said the fairy, with her pixie dust in hand, top of the mountain, making life happier for everyone. Thank you very much for tuning in, folks. Have a good one and enjoy.